It should be going live any second on. Yep, I see us, and so we're just about ready to start. Bear with me. Okay, I'm going to send it over to LinkedIn now. Okay, so we are just about live. We're streaming this to all of your locations on Facebook, I believe. Just give me a second for us to be coming up. Okay, waiting for one signal, but anyway, let's get going. Hi, everybody. Good morning. Roughly 8 o'clock, and looks like we're streaming on all of Rob Maness's Facebook pages. Although I just see an error. Well, okay. So, hi everybody. This is Steve Sabludowski, publisher of IUBuzz.com. It's Friday morning, and we're going to be talking Louisiana Legislature and Louisiana politics with my friend Rob Maness, Colonel Rob Maness. And if you have any questions, comments, you know what to do. Go ahead and post them underneath the this video, and be glad to go ahead and to discuss that with you, your questions, etc. So, good morning, Colonel Maness. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Steve. How are you today?
I'm doing fine, thank you so much. So we're streaming this on Facebook in 4 locations on Facebook, all of your Facebook pages, one of mine, YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, and so it's a full range of destinations for us. So what's been going on this week in the Louisiana Legislature and just in Louisiana politics?
Well, it probably doesn't seem like much to the average observer, Steve, but one of the things that I saw that from a conservative's perspective and a constitutionalist, more importantly, is the head of the Democrat Party in Louisiana, Senator Karen Peterson, tweeted out former Supreme Court Justice John Paul Stevens' op-ed, and her comment was simple. It just said, repeal the Second Amendment. That op-ed was in the New York Times, and it really, to those of us that believe the U.S. Constitution is relevant today as the day it was written, and that have sworn to defend it, people like me, it's really disturbing to see the head of a state party, opposition or not to my own party, say that we should repeal something like the Second Amendment. As you know, the first 10 amendments are known as the Bill of Rights. The first 2 amendments were incorporated into the Constitution before the Bill of Rights was even ratified. So we're very concerned about that. We're concerned, obviously, at the national level with the focus on repealing the Second Amendment at the same time that you have these so-called activists that are coming out from different shootings and those kind of things that are getting a lot of media play, that are saying, oh, no, nobody wants to really take your guns, and those types of words coming out. It just doesn't make it very believable when the leaders of the opposition party and the leaders of the intellectuals on the liberal side of this debate, and it has been a debate for quite some time, are now openly saying in publications like the Standard in the United States, the New York Times, that we should repeal the Second Amendment. I think that's causing quite a bit of concern amongst those of us that believe that we should protect our civil rights.
Okay, so what I'm going to do, since you brought it up, and I was able to find it, let me go ahead and I'm going to put up the tweet. And so bear with me, just need to push a button here to let everybody see it along with us. Okay, unfortunately we don't have the full tweet, sorry, but I think we do have pretty much a good bit of it, and so Karen Carter Peterson, again the chairperson of the Democratic Party, has repealed the Second Amendment. This was March 27. I think that's the day that the opinion piece op-ed came out in the New York Times. The opinion piece, so it doesn't show on the tweet itself that I put up, it doesn't show opinion John Paul Stevens repeal the Second Amendment. Now, I would argue, let me just throw some out, that this might reflect her opinion. It might reflect the Democratic Party opinion in Louisiana, but I doubt it. It might also reflect that she's putting it out there because it's an issue that she believes that should be discussed. But I think by her not putting a disclaimer and saying, here, this is what I found, I don't agree with this, or I agree with it in part, or whatever, it raises the issue. Go ahead.
Yeah, it raises the issue, and she could have just tweeted the article out and not made a comment on it, but she made a comment, and she is the head of the Democrat Party. She's an elected state senator in the state of Louisiana. The legislature is in session. There are about a dozen gun control bills that are currently in the House and the Senate being considered. They're going to come up in committee, most of them, I believe, next week on April 4th. The Louisiana Self-Defense Coalition, of which I'm a co-founder of, it is made up of the majority of Louisiana gun rights groups and constitutional groups, is going to be taking on that debate. We are already talking to the representatives in the legislature that are pro Second Amendment. But you're right. She could have put a disclaimer out there, and that makes it even more disturbing. I've seen folks in the Republican Party, the real partisan type, say, "Go ahead, run on that as your message here in 2018." And by the way, in Louisiana in 2019, our elections are coming up. So go ahead and run on that message. Which really would be interesting, because while Louisiana is a red state, considered to be a red state, I believe it's really more in deep red. But on the Second Amendment, even our governor, who's a Democrat, sent out mailers with the endorsement of the NRA on his mailers, if I remember correctly, when he was running for governor and winning in 2015. So it'd be very interesting to see what happens to the Democrat Party. I believe, and I've tweeted back at Senator Peterson that I believe that it would be the Democrats in Louisiana's final act if they came out and tried to run on a platform plank of repealing the Second Amendment.
Did she respond?
No, she did not respond, which tells me that she put that out there intentionally to get the attention And to me, she's put a marker on the ground. She doesn't have to really say anything else. It's a very simple statement. And the bills that are coming through the legislature really stand for themselves. I think Representative Blake Maness from New Iberia said it best in a video that he released earlier this week. He said, none of these bills will do anything to keep a criminal from using a gun in a violent crime of any type. All of them are aimed at law-abiding citizens. So we're going to work to defeat every single one of those bills at the grassroots level in the Louisiana Self-Defense Coalition. And we will work with folks like Representative Maness and other larger national groups like the NRA and the Gun Rights Across America, the National Association of Gun Rights, and Gun Owners of America to defeat these bills. And unfortunately, it takes a lot of resources and a lot of effort to get that done at a time when we really need to be focusing on things like the budget and getting our state in a fiscal condition so businesses are attracted here and we create more jobs for our population.
Okay, so I'm looking at some of the comments. Thank you, Vicki Smith, for sharing. Patricia Terry, we need to protect our Second Amendment rights. Patricia Terry, thank you. And Richard Heimel, thank you for a thumbs up. Those people, please go ahead and share. Share with your friends, share with your Facebook friends. Let everybody know that Rob Maness is discussing Second Amendment rights at this point in time. So, what? I mean, I agree. I mean, you know, she needs to explain herself. If she feels that she's in favor of repealing the Second Amendment, you know, as chairperson of the Democratic Party, she needs to own it. You know, she needs to stand up and say, yeah, look, that's what I believe.
Yeah, own it. You know, that's the way that we get change to our Constitution. That's the way it's written, is that it's you can amend it. As we all know, it's a very high bar. You have to have a 2/3 majority in each of the Senate and House of Representatives, and then 3/4 ratification of the states. That's a very high bar. While it's not impossible, I seriously doubt that they would succeed in that effort. It's been tried before. Many amendments have been tried before and failed because the bar is so high. I think the founders were very smart in setting the bar as high as it is. Unfortunately, though, this gets to a deeper subject of that a lot of people in our country, and I think we're pretty evenly divided because it's really due to a lack of education and a lack of study on what we should be studying in the United States of America, and that's things like natural rights and studying the history of what led to the words that went into the Declaration of Independence and then later on the United States Constitution, because this country is very, very unique. We hear Europeans and Australians and Asians and say all the time these days, well, we just banned all of our guns and we don't let people say this independence, put people in jail on the United States Constitution. You know, the UK just put a comedian in jail for saying something bad that they didn't like. Well, they don't have the First Amendment and the Second Amendment and the Bill of Rights, and their countries weren't founded in the unique way ours was on the natural rights of nature, that men and women are born equal. We're created that way. We have a right to life. We have a right to private property. We have a right to protect that private property and that life. And that's where the Second Amendment comes in. And that's where the First Amendment comes in, and all 5 rights that are in the First Amendment. No other country has those capabilities where the people have given their power over to create a government. All the other governments in this world have been created by royalty or by force, and where dictators have taken over and they've established the laws through authoritarian means. That has not happened in the United States of America. As a matter of fact, it's just the opposite. There's a series of paintings in the Capitol Rotunda in the United States Capitol. I just took my youngest son up there a few weeks ago to show him those paintings. The most important one to this country and its founding is when General George Washington handed his military commission as the commander-in-chief back to civilian control in the Continental Congress. And that's what led to the creation of this country that we know today. That doesn't mean that we're not going to argue, that we're not going to debate. I mean, this gun debate has been going on for decades. It will continue to proceed, I believe, because it's important. People get hurt in shootings like the school shooting just happened in Parkland, but also people get saved, like the attempted school shooting that happened in Maryland just shortly after that, where police officers showed up and had the courage to face down the shooter, and the shooter ended up taking his own life before the police, about the same time the police officer shot at him. So there are two very valid sides to this debate. And if Ms. Peterson genuinely believes what she tweeted out, and it's much like the President of the United States on your side of that debate, Steve. If he's the President of the United States and he's tweeting out these words in his own name, then it has to be taken to a certain point that he believes what he's saying. Well, I believe the same thing with Peterson, just like I do with President Trump, and that she needs to step up. Come on, step up and take it on. Please go for it, because the debate is very important. I am personally tired of, as a lifelong and endowment member now of the NRA, being called a murderer over the last few weeks, and the organization that I'm a citizen part of, the NRA, being called a terrorist organization, and it being taken seriously by about half the country. I mean, there were 500,000 people on the streets not too long ago, young people especially, that don't understand the Second Amendment, many of them, that all they listen to is what's in the media and what they see and hear in the media, which is by and large not accurate when it comes to these types of policies, and especially to their own rights. I mean, you can literally see high schoolers call for and protests to take away the Second Amendment right, but at the same time saying you can't take away my right to have a backpack that's not made out of clear plastic because you're violating my privacy. Well, all of those rights are important for us to protect. Not just that, though, is they seem to think that government gives those rights. And the reason those rights were detailed in the Bill of Rights is that the government doesn't give those rights, and that we wanted to ensure through the founders that those rights were documented in the Constitution, so the government would know that they don't give those rights. They come naturally to human beings because of our existence.
So Lynn Matthews says some people don't believe in natural rights. Do you find that to be true?
How can you not believe? Are you saying people don't believe in nature?
Lynn Matthews says some. Oh, okay, I understand what you're saying. Says some people don't believe in natural rights.
I think some people don't believe in rights coming from the Creator, but I find very few that, after they put some thought into it, that don't believe that they have natural rights, a natural right to life as a human being, a natural right to be free as a human being. Doesn't come just, in my case, I believe in God, so I believe there's a Creator. I think most of the founders believed in some way there was a Creator, and that these rights are given to us by our Creator, but they come to us by nature, through nature, and that's why the term natural rights is also used, because that was the founders, I believe, acknowledgement that not all people believe in a Creator or God. And they wanted to make sure that we founded a nation that was welcoming as much as possible to all people, even though they were constrained by their times and couldn't overcome the worst thing that was a part of early America, which was slavery. So people, not just African Americans, but many types of people. They wrote a document that eventually led to not just war, but to the ability to break through that after the violence that had occurred due to the elimination of slavery, but to break through eventually the laws. And now we live in a society where, at a minimum, our laws are applied as equally as humanly possible, and they're written in such a way to not infringe on those basic natural rights.
let me just change gears for a second, still talk about the gun issue, but I just want to maybe make this as controversial as possible. You know, I always love, you know, I'm like the president. I love.
I don't like controversy.
I love controversy and chaos. You know, but no, I'm kidding. I do like discussing the issue, and that's where, you know, the controversy aspect comes in. And so my question is, obviously Laura Ingraham has gotten blasted for the comments that she made, that she apologized for. What do you think about that particular controversy? Do you think that she went over the line? Do you think that, you know, maybe her apology should be taken? Do you think that the companies that have decided not to sponsor her should rethink? I mean, your thoughts?
I absolutely think the company should rethink it. You know, I believe in the free market, and I tweeted out my deletion of my Expedia app on my phone, which was my most used travel app for booking airline flights, hotels, rental cars if I need them, and those kind of things. And I'm just going to go to another one of the hundreds of travel coordination and ticket booking apps that are out there. I think those companies will learn very quickly that while the left-wingers have a big voice, because most in the media support them and put that voice out and those kind of things, that it's the conservatives that and the believers in the principles in the Constitution and the free market that have the ability to go out and the buying power to affect their bottom line the most. So they should definitely rethink it. I absolutely don't think Laura Ingraham crossed the line. I think the individual she was talking about has been turned down for entry to 4 different colleges. You know, I'm not one to talk about grades in high school. I was a 3.2 out of 4 grade point average guy, you know, just slightly above average. And I'm one of those kids that didn't work hard enough and didn't meet his potential in high school. But I learned later through college that you can and should do that in order to make the best out of your life. But what I think is ironic is that the left-wing media has been saying, "Oh, you can't criticize these children from Parkland because they've just been through this horrific event and those kinds of things, and they're kids." And but on the other hand, they've been pushing the media narrative out to take them seriously and those kinds of things. And then when Laura Ingraham even just obliquely criticizes Mr. Hogg, because Mr. Hogg was whining about not being accepted to these colleges in California, I believe it was, to be quite frank about it, she obliquely criticized him, and then he comes back with a vicious attack and lists her advertisers, and now these advertisers are going for it. Well, you know what? There's other things happening, like Ambassador Susan Rice, the left-wing liar on Benghazi from the Obama administration, going on the board of Netflix, and I'm running my media group, Iron Liberty News, is running a Twitter poll right now. It's got about 81% on it that are saying they're going to cancel their Netflix accounts because of that. So, you know, it's
no, I mean, that's
you know, it's one, you know, it happens on both sides.
Yeah,
look,
both sides,
but I don't think she should have ever apologized. Look, I've been the center of controversy in the last 6 months on something that I said very strongly to a liberal on the radio, on live radio, on my radio show, Iron Liberty News Radio, and I will not apologize for taking down somebody that's just wacky and says something to me like that individual said to me after the dedicated record that I have in my professional life. So, and I have not apologized and will not apologize for what I said to him in that case. And I don't care if it costs something like an advertiser or even an election for that matter. And there are some out there that's not the truth, but there are some out there that say that it cost me the election to the Louisiana House of Representatives. But I stick by what I said. I try to do everything with integrity and from a principled perspective, and I meant what I said to the individual. It's just too bad that some people in the media took it one way and look, I grew up from a small child in the military world and was a sergeant and a colonel. And I'm not making any excuses, but, you know, we have different language in that culture.
What you said, out of curiosity, I didn't hear about that. So without naming the name of the person, you know, what was said, what was actually said by him?
Well, on my talk radio show, I had a way of cutting off callers, especially the ones that got wacky. He called me an extremist. And I rattled through my qualifications and being investigated every 5 years for all my life and having access to the president's nuclear decision book, blah, blah, blah. And he kept going and he started using profanity, I believe, if you go back and look at the tapes on that. And I just told him to blow me and started cutting him off. That's my way of cutting him off. And ended up cutting the call off shortly after that, after he used profanity 3 or 4 more times.
Right.
But just that term, you know, supposedly got me in trouble. But my supporters loved it because they saw me as taking on this guy that's quite frankly an extremist left wing progressive, and it makes a habit and a profession out of trying to attack conservatives, and we're not put up with it. And Laura Ingraham should never have apologized to that punk.
So let me ask you a question about that. And so you're saying that David Hogg had posted this himself first. Is that correct? And then she followed up?
No, he said something in an interview with Don Lemon or maybe it's somebody else, Bill Maher on HBO. He was whining about his not getting him and some of the other people in the group for this march group that's being funded by millions of dollars of left-wing funders, by the way, that they were whining about not getting accepted to these certain colleges in Southern California and everything. And Ingraham just called him out on it, you know, because the people on the left at the national media level are saying we should take these folks seriously. And, you know, everybody should be taken seriously. Everybody's got a right to speak. I totally agree with that. And Ingraham has a right to criticize them. And basically what she said, she tweeted it out and said, look, you know, the guy has been denied entry by several colleges, and we are expected to take them seriously. You know, it's just one of those things. It happens on both sides.
If he brought the issue up first,
yeah, he did, then
I certainly can understand. However, let me just tell you this. I mean, I've seen some things where, where it's been totally misrepresented, putting these kids in Nazi video representing their members of the Nazi Hitler Youth group. I mean, Alex Jones did that. I mean, that is really offensive.
It is offensive. Look, I tweeted out, look, Breitbart News is coming to do their first national town hall here in New Orleans on April 5th. I tweeted out their poster yesterday, and the very first comment on it got the guy blocked immediately, fastest block in history on Twitter, was, oh, it's Hitler's birthday. How appropriate. For somebody to even imply that a person like me, who has served this country for 32 and a half years, who has friends laying in Arlington. I was just in Arlington for a funeral 3 weeks ago. The first casualty to be buried in Arlington from Iraqi freedom was an Air Force officer that's a friend of mine. For somebody to even imply that with a reply like that is absolutely offensive. But you know what? Unfortunately, in politics and in our social communication environment today, that is exactly how it is. And if you're going to put yourself out there, you have to accept it. It's just like when WWL Channel 4 did that TV hit spot on me after I told that guy that crazy on radio station because my opponents called it in. They bleeped it. When I said the words blow me, they started bleeping, and they bleeped for like 20 seconds as he went through 3 or 4 times of expletives when I never said an expletive. And it made me look like I said a string of expletives. And that's how they made it look. And that's exactly why they had to take it down before they even showed it a second time, because we called them on it.
Okay.
But they left it, but they aired it once, and that's all it took to get that out there. But their editing made it look like I had said a whole string of expletives, and I didn't say anything. It's a big common figure of speech in the United States military, or any military right now, from what I can see, and as far as I'm concerned, and I don't really care, and I'm never going to apologize for that.
Okay.
And the other thing is, I'm never going to apologize for taking down a liberal hack who says it's their profession to attack conservatives, because we believe on the conservative side, on the constitutional side, that we're in the right, not right left, but we're in the right because we're on the side of the Constitution of the United States. And if you want to change it, then get your balls up and go out there and change it, Senator Karen Carter Peterson, and get your people together. But I guarantee you this, you're going to lose. That's what I would say to Ms. Peterson.
Sure.
If I had the opportunity to. As a matter of fact, I did tell her to go for it.
Okay. So Ron Chason says Rob Maness is the man. Nadra NZ says, I grieve for the Parkland victims, but grieve more often for daily low-income victims whose lost lives no one does mass marches about. Nadra also says, go Rob, and Ron Chason says, Louisiana needs a new governor. Let's piggyback on what Ron Chason has said about Louisiana needing a new governor. The governor has not been very successful so far in this legislative session.
No, he hasn't. And unfortunately, this is my opinion only, but I speak as somebody that's not been in an elected office except for a very, very low level one in the Republican Party over here in St. Tammany. And that is if he would think more like a leader and less like a political partisan, he might have more success. I mean, let's face it, he's got a Republican House and a Republican Senate. Every statewide elected official is a Republican, I believe, in the state of Louisiana. There's only one Democrat in the congressional delegation in the state of Louisiana. That to me tells me he needs to put his leadership hat on more than he does his partisan hat. And really think about what's best for the state of Louisiana. Is what's best for the state of Louisiana, Steve, really to continue to try to grow a state budget to over $30 billion when we just don't have the revenue sources to be able to sustain it? I mean, I get it that half of that or more, a little bit more, is federal dollars, but the other half is not. And it's just incredible to me that knowing the governor and how much he loves the state and loves the people of the state, that he can't walk away a little bit from the partisanship and a lot more towards the leadership role. And I think he'd be a lot more successful. Not to say he's got to acquiesce to everything the Republican legislature says he has to. Of course not. Nobody would expect a opposite party governor to do that. But find a way to address this issue for the long-term health of our state, so our state is attracting people instead of repelling them, and they're going off to, I think I saw an article that mentioned the promised land of Texas and other states that don't have an income tax, that have a little bit better business climate that attracts people there instead of coming here. That's what he needs to focus on. And if he can't focus on that, he's not going to win next year. He's not going to get reelected.
Oh, okay. By the way, I wrote a column just early this week, and let me just push that, but also let me convey what the message was. Basically, it appears that Louisiana, 41% of our budget comes from the feds. We're number 2 in the nation in terms of getting federal dollars. There was misinformation that was out there. No need for me at this point to mention where it came from, but it compared us to another state, North Carolina, and the comparison was totally off, meaning suggesting that the amount per capita in Louisiana was extraordinarily more than the amount per capita in North Carolina. Person making that claim didn't take in the federal dollars. That's important. 41% of the money that we get is federal money. Do you have any idea, because I don't know what the number might be, but do you have any idea how much of that is matched by Louisiana? So in order to keep getting that 41%, what percent comes from the Louisiana budget?
That's a great question, and no, I do not know the answer to that question, but I'm sure there is some amount that has to be matched. I mean, the legislators are always talking about, once you get past what has to be matched to the federal department, the federal funding, and then the other dedicated funds and legislated dedicated funds, both in the Constitution and in law, that they only get a few $1 billion to make decisions on in the education and the healthcare arena. Unfortunately, or not healthcare, but education and I'm drawing a blank here. But the two parts that they're allowed to do that with. So there must be a sizable amount. The last numbers that I saw was that about 17 billion was federal dollars, and the rest, and I think the budget's approaching 29 billion. So the rest is state dollars, but not all of that is able to be addressed by the legislature as far as spending.
Yeah, and I'm going to get that information for you in a second to be as precise as possible. I think it was something like 18 billion in terms of Louisiana and 11 billion in terms of the feds, roughly. And that's about right, about 40, about, it came out to be about 41% comes from the feds. And I'm assuming a good chunk of that is going to be Medicaid in terms of the Medicaid expansion. We're number two in the nation. Mississippi, if I recall correctly, being number 1. North Carolina was number 25. So the point of the column was that this person was saying, hey, look, we don't need to cut because, we don't need to. We need to cut because look how much money is coming from Louisiana in terms of the overall budget, but they forgot to include the federal money. And that comparison was just a bad comparison. So we have about 5 more minutes. Let me ask you, is there any topic that we haven't touched upon today that dealing with, say, Louisiana Legislature that you want to talk about?
Well, hey, there's a lot of people smile and they giggle when they hear the term occupational licensing or licensing for hair braiders or licensing for florists. But that's a big deal here in Louisiana. The largest barrier to entry for young people to enter the small business arena in our state is our extremely prolific occupational licensing boards and requirements for everything. I think even to construct a casket, you have to have a license or be approved by an occupational board to do that. And it's ridiculous. And there is an effort to, and has been since the last legislative session, to repeal some of these sillier ones like hair braiding. Has anyone been killed or hurt significantly, seriously by hair braiders? I don't think so. I saw the debate last time and nobody could really put up the facts on that. Same thing with florists and those kind of things. So, call your representatives, call your state senators, get on the horn with them now because it's being debated in committee right now on the House side on the florist issue anyway, and in occupational licensing in general. And let them hear from you, especially if you're a young person. And I've heard from young people all around the state that is the #1 issue for them. Because they want to start small businesses. A lot of them, that's their goal. They don't want to go to work for a large corporation. They want to start a small business and stay in their hometown, really. And they want to be able to do that, but it's just not possible the way with our licensing board. The place the governor could save some money is eliminate some of this. I think we have over 70 boards and commissions in this state. It's a huge number compared to other states. But Steve, let's get back to the the falsity in the story you were talking about and other misleading information. You see that in this gun debate that's raging right now from the left. You know, everything's we've debunked it several times, you know, that there have been 18 mass shootings in schools this year. It's just absolutely false. It's not true. That school shootings are an epidemic and have been increasing. Actually, when you look at the numbers, that is not true. It's false. That AR-15s are used every other day to kill masses of people, not just in schools and all that. When for rifles total, not just the AR-15, it's 1% or less. Not that any death is good by accident, by intentional act or not. But we have those issues across the board with lots of different types of devices like cars and those kind of things at a lot higher rates. And that's what I wanted to get to. Mr. Enzi's comment kind of gets to that. You know, there's 11 kids a day die from texting and driving in this country. There's 115 deaths a day from opioid overdoses, and most of those are kids in this country. Okay. Don't even get me started on the abortion debate, where we've killed $55 million unborn children since Roe versus Wade was passed. And you have groups like Planned Parenthood that do over 300,000 abortions a year. It's documented. That's just a fact. Out doing the March for Our Lives. It's just ridiculous, the amount of misleading information and the misinformation and propaganda campaigns. And it's not just on the left, but the left has most of the media, so it stands out more to somebody like me, who's a constitutionalist that believes in the right to free speech for everybody. And I would never say that they should be regulated to the point where they can't say that, because I believe in the free press. But I would say that the misleading information, it's what led me to create Iron Liberty News, to fight the fake news with the truth, to use President Trump's term that he likes to use. So Mr. Enzi's right. I mean, there's a whole lot of things that we need to do. And on the issue of the budget article you're talking about, don't compare Louisiana to North Carolina. North Carolina doesn't have the poverty rate amongst children. I mean, in New Orleans, 50% of the African-American children are below the poverty line. Give me a break. North Carolina doesn't have the same demographics as Louisiana. And with our demographics and our economic conditions in this state, if you're going to compare us to somebody, compare us to Mississippi, quite honestly, when you're talking about that kind of issue. But you know, it's a free world, and they can say whatever they want, but it only hurts your cause if you put misinformation out. Now, we can give those, whoever that was, the benefit of the doubt and say they made a mistake. Maybe they'll put a clarification out or highlight that. I've heard that a reporter from the Advocate did call them out on that with the facts. So hopefully that'll happen, because, I mean, even like my case with WWL, when they did the video hit, we called and talked to the producer, and after we got through the disagreement, he agreed that the video that they did on me was edited and presented an image of me that was incorrect, and they took it down and they just put the transcript on their website. So it's one of those things that, unfortunately, in a free country like this one, and we still are free, we have to put up with. But that's why a guy like me can just start talking and start saying what I think is the truth.
Okay, two more tweets real quick. This one, unfortunately, you can't, Rob cannot see these tweets, so I really have to, unfortunately, read them to him. But he and I did talk about this just briefly. This one is from the AP, Melinda DeLotte. Says legislative leaders propose a budget that would increase spending on their own agencies nearly $12 million next year, despite a large budget gap and talk of widespread cuts to programs and services. Meaning, hey, our legislators who are telling us we need to cut, they're proposing a $12 million increase for the budget for starting July 1. Your take?
Look, the reason why I'm an advocate for term limits that work, and we may have term limits here in Louisiana, but they don't work. John Alario, God bless him, he's a public servant, but he's just the head of the Senate. He's been in the legislature, I think, for 40 years now. Because once you become part of the government, you advocate for the government more than you advocate for the people that you're supposed to be representing you. And that's just a fact. It happens at the federal level. That's why I've called for term limits in Congress at the federal level multiple times, and will continue to fight for that. And I've called for term limits reform, and will work for that if I get the opportunity, when that opportunity arises, I should say, here at the state level, to reform our term limits to make them more effective. I mean, that's the bottom line. Is that's a typical bureaucratic government approach to trying to protect itself. And if I were the Speaker of the House right now, since they're Republican led, I would be telling my agencies that you're not going to get that increase, because that's going to be the first thing on the chopping block when we go through the process, because we've got to lead by example.
Okay, and there's one more tweet I'm going to put up. Just bear with me 1 second, please. I just need to find it. I did see it a little bit earlier today. Here, let me put it up like this. Bear with me. By the way, those people who want to read that column, it's up on BayouBuzz.com. And so here's the tweet I'm putting up. This was a column that we put up yesterday by Jim Brown. Let's see if the picture is going up, because yeah, it is. Need to sort of make it more clear though here. So it's okay. It's a picture, quite frankly, of images that I put together of John Bel Edwards in his face in the body of Moses, and it basically says, is he taking us to the promised land? Jim Brown wrote a column saying that, hey, look, every year we're looking at leaders who are saying that they're the ones who are going to take us to where we need to be. But as you know, the U.S. News and World Report article has us dead last, Louisiana dead last, and low on every area. So how are we going to possibly be able to change the mentality of the country about us if we get reports such as that one?
Well, sadly, Steve, and just to give attribution, my comment about getting to the promised land, I had read Mr. Brown's article and remembered it, but I couldn't remember who to attribute it to when I spoke earlier about getting to the promised land in Texas and those kind of things. But sadly, it's like the example of, I think Senator Conrad Appel had a bill before the Senate, a Senate committee today, or during this session, that tried to improve the rules and make it easier for senior citizens, instead of having to go to nursing homes, to be able to get that care in their own homes. It's a viable and very popular form of elderly care in the United States today. My father, before he passed away, actually experienced that, and it was great to have him in my mother's home, so that his family could be around him and check on him and still get the adequate care and those kind of things. And that bill was roundly and soundly defeated. I kept seeing tweets and comments from people, Republicans and Democrats, about it was defeated by special interests. And then they would quote a special interest group representing citizens, but that's not who they were talking about. They were talking about, I assume, the nursing home lobby, which is very powerful in our state. And until we stop electing people that are bought and paid for by these big money folks, it's just not going to happen, unfortunately. I mean, we'll win some small battles, but we're not going to see a sea change in the state of Louisiana in any way at all until we figure out how to stop these big money folks from getting their way by purchasing seats. And I just experienced that myself. I had $65,000 of big donor dollars poured into the race I was in last November, in the last week of the race, where I had won the primary, and they did a 30-point swing on us, and we got a shellacking in the runoff. But when you have $65,000 of attack ads and every medium spin against you in 8 days, that's what happens. So 2 big donors purchased that seat. That's exactly what happened, so until we stop that and figure out how to work that issue and address it, I think you're going to see some small successes, but you're not going to see a big one. I mean, Mr. Appel, I thought, would be able to swing that bill because he has good connections and I believe, with the nursing home lobby and those kind of things, and that they could work together. But it was a disaster. It was an utter failure, which was very disappointing. But it just confirmed for my supporters and I that until we figure out how to get the people's voice represented, at least on an equal footing with the donors in the state of Louisiana, we're not going to get any big major changes that will result in us being the promised land instead of Texas.
Well, my pet peeve is Citizens United. I think that has destroyed our democracy, or is destroying our democracy, because big money coming in, completely diluting your vote, my vote, one-on-one vote. I think it's disgusting. And if there was a constitutional amendment to kill that, I'd definitely be in favor of it, even though it's predicated upon free speech, the First Amendment, and that's where the problem is. But I think, I just believe that in the democratic process more. And I think that there's no way you can compete with that kind of money, even if it's coming on both sides. The average person doesn't get to really get his voice out or her voice out.
Well, unfortunately, though, that is a way that an average person, if they can get the right donors to establish a political action committee, a super PAC, like what you're referring to, the Citizens United decision wasn't just about a conservative super PAC, it's about all of them. So it's a double-edged sword. Don't take me the wrong way. That's why I haven't called for repeal of that kind of thing, because it is a double-edged sword. And a guy like me could not have run even mildly successfully in 2014, that had been in the military for 32 years. Nobody knew him. I'm a military brat that chose Louisiana as his home state because I really don't have one. And it was through that type of mechanism that I was able to do that. So it is a double-edged sword, but there is got to be a way to find the right balance.
But the voter,
and I think good people operating in good faith with each other can sit down together and maybe come up with an idea. But I got to tell you, I've looked at a lot of them, and most of them start infringing on your free speech right away.
But the problem is the voter free speech, being able to vote and have his vote count, is greatly diluted by money coming out and supporting candidates of both parties. And that's what to me, that's what the problem is. The influence from the big parties, sometimes not knowing where the money's coming from. Sometimes the connection between the party and the candidate, rather, and the PAC, super PAC, is so tenuous. And I just think that it's a horrible decision by the Supreme Court that's having a severe impact upon our democracy, both in a national and on a state level. So
yeah, it's very frustrating. I've experienced it several times now, and I've had major dollars actually supporting me in one race and in a super PAC, but I had absolutely no connection communications wise with that entity. It had no control over it, had no idea what they did until way after the election. You could see the reports, but then you're only making an educated guess on where the money went to. So I can just tell you this, that only got 5% of the vote in 2016, so they didn't do very well, and they spent a lot of money on it. So it's like I said, it's one of those things that it's got to be looked at. And again, I've had people give me some great ideas, but most of them infringe on on a person or a group of people's ability to freely associate or have free speech, which obviously is the First Amendment of the United States. And we have to make sure we protect that at the same time that we're finding the balance and getting the right people that aren't beholden to one individual or one small group of individuals with all the dollars making decisions in these legislatures.
Okay, so we've come to the end of our time, and those people watching, please go ahead and share. We'll be putting up some of the content on Bayou Buzz. It'll be certainly all the video on Bayou Buzz. It's actually playing right now on every page on Bayou Buzz. We'll be transcribing part of the content, but please go ahead and share the Facebook video. We certainly would appreciate it every Friday, 8 o'clock in the morning. So I'm going to press a button and say goodbye to Facebook and to YouTube and LinkedIn. Thank you again, Colonel Rob Maness. I really do appreciate you taking your time and again for being with us. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks for having me, Steve. And next week, on around the April 5th timeframe, I'll be co-hosting on at least one of the Breitbart News radio shows on Sirius XM that'll be broadcast from right here in Metairie, Louisiana.
I'll be darned. We'll talk about that. Okay, so I'm going to switch a button.